Greetings and marhaba, which is actually a word in Arabic for hello or greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay updated on all things artificial intelligence, or if you are an enterprise employee trying to learn the perspectives of execution, ROI, benefit, strategy, and culture, or if you're a heavy Azure platform user looking to go deeper in Azure AI, this is your ultimate destination. You can find us in Apple Podcasts as well as YouTube. I'm Shadab Hussain, your co host of the show. I'm a director of data and AI at Microsoft with over 23 years of experience in the analytics and AI field.
And I'm Jamie, the other co-host of the AI Files. As I've mentioned a couple times already, if hopefully you're not new to the podcast, but if you are, I'm a data and AI technical specialist architect, bringing over 35 years of expertise in data-related and AI capabilities. And I've worked with many of the Fortune 500 companies throughout my career. As always, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft. So with that, let's dive into today's episode. I know that we've got a lot of good news, a couple of launches, and a few of our typical things that we like to go through as far as quotes of the week. And with that, I know there's an interesting quote, I guess, that we have teed up for everyone this week from our esteemed CEO over at OpenAI, that being Sam. So Shadab, you want to take us through what Sam put out there this week for folks to kind of ponder over?
Yeah, I thought this was a tribute to, Pink Floyd. If you know, it used to be actually still is a favorite band of all time. And
They are good.
there was an album called The Wall. And I thought he was referring to that, but no, he was not. He actually put out a tweet on X saying, "There is no wall." And that's it. And he's known for some cryptic tweets. So let's dive into what the background is and what is that wall they're talking about. So, what happened was that earlier in the week, there was actually a report from the news agency, the information, and it's pretty good. We would definitely recommend people to actually check that out. They actually come out with lots of insider kind of news, right? So, I mean, some of that could be, like, let's say, just a water cooler talk, but there must be something somewhere, right? So some substance to things, possibly. But they came out with this report saying that the OpenAI's next flagship model, Orion, had shown only a moderate improvement over the ChatGPT 4 and a smaller leap compared to advances between versions that came before. They also reported that though OpenAI had only completed 20% of the training process for Orion, it was already on par with GPT-4 in terms of the intelligence and abilities to fulfill tasks and answer questions. Um, and, you know, but they also reported that the one reason, however, the improvements that are going to happen over on the top of the GPT-4 is actually very incremental, comparatively much smaller than expected. And they put out in that article saying that looks like the models are hitting the data wall, and that's where the reference of the wall comes from.
Yeah,
So
and I think the important thing you just mentioned there is data in terms of that wall. So did they give any reasons like why in terms of
yeah,
data? I have my
yeah,
hunches, but
they did actually talk about that. Interestingly, that that there is a dwindling supply of high quality text and the other data that LLMs can process during pre-training to make sense of the world, right? And remember, like LLMs are what? Like, I mean, they're just trying to copy humans, right? So they're predicting the language, they're predicting what comes next as a token, and they need that data, and
yeah,
they need constantly actually a higher supply of data. Now thing is that there is already so much pre-training has happened as part of the GPT-4. Now if you want to go to the very next, right, not just incrementally better, but actually radically next level of GPT-5, which is expected, you need lots of good data, and is part of that scaling that has to happen, which seems to be getting plateaued because people are running out of the data, right? And that's where the challenge is. So And the other problem is also, Jamie, that was also discussed in this context is that, look, to get a lot of data, now you have to start using the process called distillation, right? In a way that where the models itself are actually creating the synthetic data, and that synthetic data is then used for the training. But that creates a recursive loop, right? Because now you are actually creating the data which is tied to a lower quality of the model. That means you are now getting into a collapse kind of situation,
Right.
okay, which
Because
is also
it's
called model collapse.
yeah, because the way I think about it, it's basically regurgitating data that it already knows. So like how much smarter are you going to get based upon information that you already know? And I
Exactly.
think that's where, like, quote unquote, the proverbial wall or the diminishing returns comes in. So
Exactly.
I'd be curious, like, outside of OpenAI, I can't see that that's just a problem or a potential challenge for them. I would assume that, Google, Anthropic, Mistral, they're all going to kind of come under the same limitation, if you will, if you do deem it's a limitation.
Theoretically, yes, that is true. And that's what, in fact, the multiple news agencies started reporting, referring to the same report, because that kind of triggered people, right? Remember, billions of dollars have been invested, Jamie. There are a lot of people who are hoping for the next level. So now it kind of starts worrying people. It kind of starts worrying the whole industry as well. So that's why this whole report came out, and there was a counter of report. And expectedly, Sam Altman put out things saying that there is no wall, right? So essentially meaning that no, we're not really hitting that level of obstruction to the improvement. And the others also, like Anthropic, also kind of alluded to fact that no, we are fine. But remember, even Anthropic, they actually have not given any date for that their flagship model Opus. The Opus 3.5 has never come out yet. They just released a HiQ 3.5 recently, right? But where's the Opus? Why is it not coming out? It is supposed to be the better version and higher version of the Sonnet. So, and we don't know, right? When will it come out? So that is another thing. Um, Again, asking Zuckerberg and other CEO of other AI development companies, they publicly say, no, we haven't hit the limits of the traditional scaling laws yet. And that may be true. But there are others who are also actually kind of reflecting on the same thing, like Ilya, right? So, for example, Ilya himself actually has started saying recently that the results from scaling up pre-training had plateaued. And while on the other hand, there are like Microsoft Chief Technology Officer Kevin Scott have dismissed these concerns, and that was back in the summer. So there are people on the either side of it. There are, of course, the hawkish, the bunch of people who have actually invested in it. They are actually at the forefront of it. Think people like Horowitz, right? So Ben Horowitz, and he's saying that we are increasing the number of GPUs used to train AI at the same rate, but we are not getting the intelligent improvements at all out of it. This was
Mhm.
told by Ben Horowitz. On the other hand, if you see that there are others, like we talked about the Sam Altman, etc., and like Google former CEO Eric Schmidt, right? So he said that 2 or 3 more turns of the crank of these large models over the next 5 years he's expecting. But and he said there's no evidence that the scaling laws, as they are called, have begun to stop them. They will eventually stop, but we are not there yet. So there is a divide in that opinion.
Yeah, and I guess the way I look at it, and some of the things I've read as well, and it's definitely evident in some of the new model classes that we've seen. As example, like with O1, that training data itself is going to get us to a certain point, and it's got us to where we are today. But as you just said, there's going to be a point in time where we've collected and trained on all the data known to man. So there's going to be that limiting point, but there are potentially other strategies to actually improve these foundational models. And as I just mentioned, with OpenAI's O1 model, that's not like GPTs. That actually includes the incorporation of reasoners. So if you take all that training data that we've done, but then add reasoners to it. Right now, it's a separate model, but I would definitely assume somewhere down the line that the O1 reasoner capabilities are going to can be combined with something like a GPT to create and produce that next foundational model class. Well, if you take that same thought and you add it to other strategies, and again, the reasoner is just one, but there could be other scenarios like using a system of experts. And there's some models that are, looking at how to do that now. So if you think about, and let's keep it in the world of open AI. If you think about GPTs working together in tandem with all of their data that is known, with incorporation of reasoners, that might lend itself to a whole new capability or class of model. Does that maybe get us to AGI? I don't know. But even above that, I mean, there's two other things too that could come in to these strategies to make models better. Right now, traditionally, as we were just talking about, it's about training on text. But what about if models were trained on more than just text? Think about all of the videos that are out there just on YouTube alone. Think about all of the images that have been created. What if the models, the foundational models, were trained not only on text but video, voice recordings, trained on images? That brings itself to another class of potentially, at least, another class of models. And I'll kind of, lump that into multimodal training other than just text. And there also is another strategy that could be used here as well, and that's really around recursive self-improvement of the models. And I think some of you might have already seen this already, and I certainly have seen it with an OpenAI when I use ChatGPT, and I saw it, I think, on Claude just maybe last week as well. This I'll kind of call it you're the guinea pig. You're telling the model what is a better result. So this human feedback loop, or this recursive self improvement, part of it could be based upon humans, but part of it could be baked into the models itself to learn and get better at its inferencing. So if you combine all those together, the reasoner, system of experts, multimodal training, and this recursive self-improvement, that could be the thing that catapults us to the next level of these foundational models, rather than just having to worry about, do I have the right data? Do I have enough data? So anyway, that's, some food for thought as we think about maybe these walls that these models may hit if it was just based upon text data alone.
That is true. And Jimmy, on that point, also remember there was another actually comment from Ian Stoica, a co-founder and the chair of enterprise software firm Databricks. Um, he talked about it is possible that the performance of LLMs has plateaued in certain ways, but not others, right? So it's a mix of things, right? There's some dimension we might hit the kind of a wall a little bit earlier than in the other ways, but with some other counter strategies, you may overcome that particular wall, and again, then you push through. Then you may hit wall in some other areas. In fact, over the summer, I think a few months ago, there was actually a massive paper that came out of a kind of a research company, Epoch AI. And they talked about, are we going to hit the scaling limits? And they looked at it multiple things. So there are multiple dimensions of it, right? So there is, of course, the processing units, right? The GPUs, that's one dimension. You may actually hit the wall. Seems like that is not immediate concern. There are still capacity happening. Although supply is limited, so not everybody has the access to it. OpenAI has raised some concerns about the computing power as well. So that is still a problem. It's maybe a little bit slowing down or constrained, and that's where the connections come in. The other aspect, they talk about the energy. For example, what is the point of having all the GPUs if you don't have the energy? And that's why we can see all these companies like Microsoft and Google and Amazon, they all are restarting or starting the nuclear energy uh, like companies or the partnerships, because we can't be hit on the energy wall. They also talked about the data wall. In fact, they actually had a paper, will we run out of the data, limits of LLM scaling based on human generated data? And they said that as per their study, and their study estimate that total stock of public human generated text is approximately 300 trillion tokens. If current trend continue, LLMs are projected to fully utilize this data between 2026 and 2032, or even earlier if models are overtrained. So, their horizon seems like maybe there is an aggressive overtrading. Maybe that's why probably we are hitting. And they talked about there are some counter strategies, for example, synthetic data generation, but that's not going to fully compensate. There's a transfer learning, there's data efficiency improvement, things like that. So, but seems like data is probably more close to having more bottlenecks right now compared to energy and processing. But it's a good water cooler talk, Jamie, because we don't know. These are all talks and reporting for information and based on whatever we could piece together.
Yeah. Great. So let's switch over to some quick hitting news articles or news information for this week. So I don't think we can talk about AI without talking about agents. Certainly, it seems like agent discussion is anywhere and everywhere. And a little plug, I know that Microsoft Ignite is starting this week, depending on when you're listening to this. So Ignite actually kicks off with some of the keynotes on November 19th. So in that, certainly going to be a lot of discussion around agents. So one of the things that was just kind of brought up and kind of, I don't know if I'd call it a leak, but put out there was the work that OpenAI is planning to launch around what they're calling Operator. And this is their next generation new capability around autonomous AI agents. And this will be, at least from what I'm reading, deployed, launched somewhere in the late January, early February timeframe. And again, it's going to be focused on developers first, but it's really to enhance what OpenAI can do in this very competitive space around agents. And the intent here is, like it sounds, Operator. Um, it's going to enable OpenAI's capability around agents to operate on something, be able to do a task. There's certainly been things that OpenAI has put out already, like the Assistance API. That is, obviously very developer oriented, but it doesn't take in the account the ability to do something in terms of operate on a computer. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about it around the computer use, which was something that Anthropic put out as far as the next generation, or at least their early experiments and early research around agents. So to me, this is OpenAI putting out the things that they've been working on. We'll certainly see, once people can get their hands on it, because right now it's just early speculation on some of the things that is being talked about as far as what Operator is. But certainly we'll dive into that once it comes out and we can put our hands on it. So that's Operator. Keep abreast on what is happening on agents.
Yeah, it would be actually fun to see, Jamie, how different companies are going to have their own vision. You talked about Operator. We already know how the computer use looks like. Google is reportedly working on their own version, which will be, I think, looks like will be operating within the confines of the browser, probably
Yeah.
more as Chrome as an operating system. And then Microsoft had their own Copilot. Remember that it will be like reading the context on the screen, things like that. So different vision, different companies, of course, based on what they have control in their own sphere of things. So it would be interesting to see. But it's fascinating that it's slowly getting out of the app and into the other part of the computer as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And not to forget, Mr. Elon Musk is never behind Jamie. He's always around. He's omnipresent. So, again, we have some news from Elon Musk. XAI actually seeks $6 billion to acquire 100,000 NVIDIA GPUs for Memphis data center. And this startup, XAI, as we know that it is developing the models, the Grok series of model, and they're trying to actually raise this money, and it cuts across Musk's different ventures, right? So this, of course, they will use that in the X. It's very relevant for X because of the content, but the same thing can be used in, let's say, Tesla, robots in the cars, and
Yep.
he has enough businesses, honestly, which can easily become customers. It makes sense for Musk XAI to actually invest in it. They already have the demand for it. And these GPUs will actually power a new data center in Memphis to create a powerful supercomputer, and that will be used for training as well as the inference as well. And it essentially, of course, it's a competitive race, and he's straight away competing with OpenAI, Google. He's trying to slow them down as well. With we'll talk about some of the lawsuits that are going on. But here's the thing: simple. Computing is the currency. Whoever has more currency is gonna win the AI wars, and that's where it is. Essentially, that's where all the investment will go.
Yeah, and 6 billion. We keep on throwing around numbers that are mind-boggling, but 6 billion, and it could even be more in terms of what they raise. But the bulk of what that investment or the raising of that cash is going to be used for is, like you said, the hundreds of the GPUs, actually the 100,000, as you mentioned. What's interesting enough too, it's sort of related to this, raising of cash, but I did hear that Grok, which is their model, which you do have to pay for inside of X today, is intended to actually be released free to users. And I'm sure they'll have like a paid version, just like everybody else has. But that could be part of what this $6 billion raising of capital could be used for as well, to kind of get their AI tools in the hands of more people. Because right now it's sort of just embedded within the X ecosystem. Anyway, so I heard that X is also in the news for not only raising some cash, but they've got a couple of different lawsuits ongoing, or actually trying to get going. I guess one of the ones that I know was out there was Elon Musk was um, adding Microsoft into his existing case with OpenAI, and I think this is really focuses around um, the alleging of OpenAI working with Microsoft, and the intent was to, quote unquote, I'm using what his words are, to loot the brain trust, and loot the overall working relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI. Basically, taking OpenAI from a nonprofit to a for profit, and if people don't realize, Musk was actually an initial investor in OpenAI, which is part of the reason why. Let's just put it this way: there was differences of opinions in terms of safety, and Musk said, forget you, and I'm going to go create my own. So there's a little bit of bad blood, might be the best way of saying it, between Musk and OpenAI and Sam Altman. And that kind of relates back to his commentary that he was tricked into investing tens of millions of dollars into OpenAI before OpenAI was actually launched. So long history there, but I think this is a continuing saga, and it just seems to expand a little bit more on who is now party to the lawsuits that's there. But we'll see how this transpires. Maybe all to do for nothing, but Elon Musk is in the news for many different things these days. So it will be interesting to see how this transpires.
We got to make a Game of Thrones of the AI. Jimmy. And I wonder what role we should give to Elon Musk, because it's he is such an interesting character in the
Yeah.
whole story, right? Of the
Yeah.
AI, he was part of OpenAI. He did not agree, moving to it. It probably lost the confidence in it, kind of backed out, moved out, and then it became a success story. And then he was really, really upset about it. He, like I think almost 1.5 years ago, he actually tried to even sign those. The open letters, etc. Okay, stop the development of AI. It's not good. That didn't work. So say, okay, I'm gonna do it as well. So yes, XAI. It is actually such a funny story, and he keeps it so interesting. So obviously, he also actually sued the California itself. So the state of California, he has sued because what happened was that actually on X, Musk did post a deep fake of Kamala Harris. And when he did that, the California governor, Newsom, he actually said that manipulating a voice in an ad like this one should be illegal, clearly referencing to his own post, right? And this was a deep fake, and California did sign multitude of laws, including the one that actually blocks or rather prohibits sharing of the deep fakes during the election. So Musk has actually filed a lawsuit arguing that this AB 2655, it actually violates the California Constitution, a federal law protecting internet sites, and the First Amendment right to free speech, and violates the 14th Amendment by being too vague. Um, and you might think that, okay, like, okay, this probably gonna get thrown out. Well, not so sure. Okay, last month, actually, a federal judge, he blocked the second California law related to election deepfakes on the ground that it might violate the First Amendment. And the plaintiff in that case was the creator of the Harris deepfake that Musk shared on the X. So you never know what's going to happen, how the laws are being interpreted. It's too early stage. We will find out. um but that's what the another story of access.
Yeah, and like you said, it's one of those things to just wait and see and see where things go. By the way, I was thinking about you put it into my brain, so I was thinking about it as you were just talking. Who would I put Elon Musk as a character if this was Game of Thrones? I am an avid Game of Thrones watcher, so Peter Baelish, if you're familiar with the series, he was
Yes.
really known for being cunning and ambitious schemer. So maybe that might be an adequate portrayal. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I was thinking about Tyrone, but no, 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 probably not. Like, but yeah, that's a good character actually.
on to some launches. So we've been talking about um, the ability for Gemini, for a while. We've gone through some demos, a couple episodes back. One of the things that's been holding, I would say, Gemini back is the lack of an app on the phones, specifically on iOS or iPhones. Obviously, Gemini by Google is going to be on Android-based phones and their phones, obviously, and that operating system. But that was one of the things that was missing. So, lo and behold, there was a Gemini app for the iPhone that was released just a couple days ago. Again, the feature here is allows iPhone users to enjoy and use the Gemini experience with access to features like enhanced learning, creativity, productivity, and also by the way of using the Gemini voices. So check it out. Like I said, it's if you're an iPhone user, I downloaded it. I've used it a little bit just to play around. A new app from Google. A couple of other notable things on that. There I mentioned the voices, so there's 10 different distinct voices that can interact in 10 different languages. It does have image generation part of it as well. So Imagen 3, so that's built into it. So that produces high quality image generation directly in the model using the transforms from your text descriptions. And there is app integration. So just like you would be kind of used to seeing, so Gemini connects with other Google apps like YouTube and Google Maps to show relevant information within that single conversation. So it kind of pulls together the things that Google does and does well for those different apps. Speaking about Google, another launch that they had recently is a app called LearnAbout. So the intent is if you want to learn about things, use LearnAbout. So this is different than some of the existing tools that Google has put out, like Notebook LM, which I love, and we've done a session on that. They also have obviously Gemini in terms of their chatbot. There's Illuminate, which is tailored towards researchers. So how is this different than those other tools? So LearnAbout is actually a specialized large language model, and it's focused on learning activities or content that will help. So the audience is really around educational aid for any type of learner. You could be school age learner, or somebody in college, or just doing some research base. But the real intent is to foster that understanding and it really drive critical thinking around it. One of the things that sets LearnAbout apart is the multimedia that it brings. So it's more than just text. It brings in imaging, diagrams, and annotated text to really help provide contextual learning. So the other thing too is that it adapts to what you as a user kind of dive into. So if you're more interested in diagram and some of that annotation, and you like gear towards that, or kind of are drawn to that information and click on it, it'll provide more and more of that. So it's really intuitive. That's the other thing too that I like. And by the way, I'm going to do a quick demo in a minute or two, but it's very intuitive. So what Google does pretty well is it's focus on user interface and how I as a user could interact with that detail. So clickable feature highlights, related questions that it brings up, visual prompts to really guide you as a user through this customized learning experience. It's all there. So as I said before, how this thing stands out, it's really based upon a trained or a focused model, which again is based upon the Gemini models. So this is distinct from their other tools, though. As I mentioned, it's different than Notebook LM. And again, it's really focused on how I want to learn. There are some limitations, though. It's experimental, just like Notebook LM was put out there in experimental path. This is definitely a little bit earlier in that experimental design or development phases. It is restricted to the US, and you do need to be put on a wait list. I seem to get through pretty quickly, so I don't think it takes that long to be quote unquote made available to you.
Everybody knows you, Jimmy.
Say again?
I said everybody knows you. That's why.
Oh. Yeah, that's true. So let me just jump into a quick demo of Notebook LM. Sorry, I said Notebook LM. It's on the top of my mind. Really, it's a demo on LearnAbout. So just let me know. You can see my screen now, right? I put it up.
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I want to kind of run through with LearnAbout is you can see the UI. By the way, the URL, we'll put this in the show notes, but it's learning.google.com. Experiments, again, it's on the experiments, and then LearnAbout. I'm still hitting the sign up page, but you just go to the LearnAbout itself. So you could see, some of the things that are here, right? Like where do you want to start? But everything starts out with a prompt. So for me, I think most people know and understand, and it's even in my tagline here, that I'm into weather. So I always like doing demos based off of weather, just because it's cool and I get to learn some things at the same time. So what I'm going to ask it is, what impact does terrain have on tornado formation in the United States? I was about to tell you some things, but let's use LearnAbout to get into that information. So what you see right away is it jumps to a new page, and it starts to say, okay, it gives you some textual information, which is typical what you would kind of see in any type of chat. But what it's doing is it's giving me imaging. It's giving me other content to explore. It's pulling up, videos, obviously that are on YouTube, but it's providing me more than just quote unquote a textual representation. I kind of treat this like the AI, the new AI web searching through Google. So, the overviews, the AI overviews. To me, this is sort of like a morph of that, because I'm doing a search, but I'm doing it based upon learning. And what you see here is, it does all these different things, like, as I mentioned, bring in textual information, other content. But now it's giving me, all right, tell me additional questions that I might want to ask. So these are the recommended next step questions. So tell me more about wind shear and how it contributes to tornado formation. But it's also giving me other suggested topics that I could dive into as well. So if you think about this, or the way I think about it is that if I'm opening up my encyclopedia, where am I starting? Well, starting at page 1, but now I'm getting references to a bunch of other things that I could go and explore. And you can see as well, I could say, all right, go deeper into this. So now it's going to dive in even, quote unquote, deeper into content that it could provide back to me. So to me, it's pretty cool. It's again, like I said, a nice way of presenting this data through the interface. And it's just one of the other tools that Google is putting out as far as, leveraging artificial intelligence, leveraging Gen AI to make a different user experience for you as a user. So what do you think? Should I, um, are you going to start using this today or?
I
Um,
already did. Pretty cool, actually. I'm like thinking of, it's so exciting getting to the answers. I use the Chat GPT, I use Microsoft Copilot, and this is definitely another tool that I'm going to add to that list because it looks pretty slick, actually, the kind of information it is providing. Hey, Jamie, so can it also predict when will be the rains in the New Jersey? Because, there has been some drought going on.
Yeah, I can't do a prediction, but maybe that'll feed into the next model. But all seriousness, the Weather Service and some other agencies outside of the U.S. are using artificial intelligence to create next generation models more than just the traditional numeric ones. So I do see this is going to be a field inside of weather that will leverage these types of advancements in AI, and hopefully one day be able to have a better prediction for violent storms like tornadoes.
Wow, I mean, I'm thrilled with this app. In fact, we don't have. I think it wasn't enabled, but even the OpenAI also is actually adding some more capabilities on their app in the Mac OS app particularly, where you can actually now start interacting with the other apps, particularly the coding apps like Xcode and others, I believe. On the Mac, actually, you can. So what happens is that in that case, you don't have to just simply have to copy and paste from one application to another. It can actually do an app to app integration. It's a new capability. I checked the app on my Mac; it wasn't yet enabled. But seems like this is something that they're heading, and they will have a different vision, but it will actually help them interact. It doesn't have a write back capability, but it has right now for like the readout capability from the other apps. So we'll
Mhm.
see how will that be developed, but this is exciting.
So that kind of like takes care of launches for this week. I think there's going to be a lot that we'll have to talk about new capabilities and launches from Ignite. And I know that we mentioned we'll probably do just a devoted episode to all of the announcements that I know are expected this coming week from Ignite. So, keep keep a lookout for that episode. It'll be chock full of new capabilities, and we'll run through a lot of demos on that.
Yep.
Speaking of Microsoft and Azure and what we're doing in AI, I think there was some at least something announced this week with some collaboration with some healthcare companies or healthcare slash agricultural. Have any news on that?
Yeah, actually, good point, Jamie. That like because of the Ignite, where we will have to probably do a 5 or 10 hour episode next week. But until then, it's generally a dry week from a dry couple of weeks because everything is held for the Ignite announcement. So not much really right now in this week, except that there was a collaboration between Bayer and Microsoft on the AI powered agricultural tools. So there is that partnership going on between Bayer and Microsoft to develop the AI models which are tailored for the agronomy and crop protection, and offering those tools through the Microsoft platform. So which is on the line of the theme of what the companies are doing, right? Different companies like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, they are actually doing the partnership with the other players, the category players, and developing and deploying the AI models for the specific field. So, it's a whole app layer for the domains which is actually developing further. So that was that announcement on that part. That initiative will actually lead to more efficiency, more efficacy on the agriculture, and increasing the crop yield, which is I think very important, right? I mean, believe it or not, every human still need to eat, is despite the AI. So the agriculture does need to continuously like radically upgrade and feed the expanding population in the world.
Yeah, and you mentioned very quickly a couple minutes ago about, the drought. We are experiencing a drought here in the Northeast and in New Jersey and Delaware. So models like this that can help crops and predict, best ways of producing more yield, super important because there's obviously climate shifts and climate change, and if we can get smarter based upon use of AI for agriculture and the things that are produced for our food supply, I think that's obviously a benefit for us all.
Yep. Okay, perfect. So now let's talk about the AI, kind of company or the business of the week, and how AI beyond these things that we talked about is being put to the use. And for this week, Jamie, let's talk about this company, Particles.ai. Now, Particles.ai is actually, you can say, kind of a AI news aggregator, which is not entirely a completely new kind of an invention. However, it is a different take on it. So, this company, Particles.ai, was founded actually last year by the couple of former Twitter folks, like Senior Director of Product Management at Twitter, Sarah Beckpour, and there was another person, another co-founder, Marcel Molina, who is actually former senior engineer at Twitter and Tesla. So this is like an app or the website you can also access. You can go there, and then essentially it will show you bunch of news, right? In like small widgets, and then you can go click on that. It's like a threads, and then it will show you more aggregation in like some bullet points, like like 3 or 4 bullet points with some images and the links. So they're not trying to completely like what you showed the learn about, which is on a specific topic, but this one is actually more for the news purpose, and more concise. So it will give you just a very summary of those things, but it will also give you the links, etc., so that you can go to the original sources as well. And it has like bunch of features, like for example, the features like explain like I'm five, um or like you can, for example, have something like the 5 W's, like who, what, when, where, and why. um, and then you can have like new summarize in another languages beside English, or you can do a listen to an audio summary. All those kind of features, so different features are there. So I checked it out. It was pretty good, actually. It was pretty slick, and I think that I'm definitely gonna try to use it more, because it actually gave me a very organized pieces of information on the news side, Jamie.
Hmm. Interesting. I'd be curious. I haven't used that yet, so I'd be curious in how it compares to something like Perplexity. Is it along that same line? Because you mentioned it's a news aggregator, which I would assume then is different than just what Perplexity can provide as far as searching.
Yes, good question. Actually, so this is like just a subset of what Perplexity can do. So things like Perplexity and ChatGPT, you can actually now go and you can get the latest search results, right? So you can even search for the latest news item, for example, and it didn't give you the whole bunch of things. This one, Particles.ai, is specifically limited to the news alone, and the kind of summary it will give, it's not like a long form information. It is, and it's not like an explanatory article or something. It is essentially the latest and the current news that are happening. It will give you that listing essentially, and then you can drill down, and you can have different perspective. You can also check out the political spectrum, like where does it stand, which is again not a new feature. Others have also done that, like Smart News and Startup. Like there's a company called Brief, etc., where you can actually go to a particular developing news, and you can see how the different spectrum, right? More, let's say, Republicans, more Democratic news channel, oriented news channel, how they are reporting on the same news. So you can have bubble chart in the reds and the blues, and you can actually traverse accordingly. So that it just essentially allows you not to have a kind of an echo chamber effect, right? Where you're just reading the perspective of somebody like you, rather than you can actually get a diverse perspective as well. So pretty good from that point of view, but it doesn't, you can't just simply search for like what you showed about in the learn about, right? That explained to me the tornado formation, things like that. It cannot. It's just a news item.
Got it. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm definitely interested to check it out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, um we will see like how it will work out in terms of the commercial, etc. Right now it's just too early. They're just showcasing essentially what they have done. They're using Gen AI. They're using the LLMs. They're using actually the LLMs from the OpenAI, or even from Cohere and Anthropic as well. Even some open source models. Also, they're using the 11 Labs for audio. They're using some traditional AI models from Google Cloud, and they're using the LLM for example, summarizing the content into the bullet point summaries that I talked about, or other summary styles, or identifying like, which articles are about the same story, like so and similarity search, etc., and clustering together, etc., or providing essentially the answers to the question that people are asking. So a typical way in which the LLMs are used is what they are actually deploying it for. They also have eval check, right, which is important because ultimately you want to make sure that it is being reported correctly, particularly the items like news, etc. So there are some evals that they have also built in. There is a human review kind of element as well, but there's a machine review also. So you generate those results, and then another model or the instance actually will review those results. So that kind of goes on. Plus, there is a human review in the cycle as well. So interesting new launch, and we'll see how that does importantly in the commercial terms.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out and compare that to some of the things that I'm already using. It's always
Yep.
good to see and learn new tools, me included. So
Absolutely, and it's a fascinating ways in which people are using the AI. So it's always fun to actually find that. Okay, and as I said, right, I think we will have tons and tons of things to talk about. Somehow holding it all back for the next week in
yeah,
the when we go through the Ignite news.
yeah, it might be so much info. We might have to even break that up into two different sessions. Like I said, I've been privy to hear some of the things coming in. It's a lot. So look forward to that.
Exactly. It's that Ignite. Don't think it's just a spark. It's a fire. It's a lot of things. Um, and but until then, everybody have a great week ahead, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Catch you later. Have a good weekend, Janelle.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, Jimmy.